Okay, we're going to be in Exodus 25, beginning in verse 10. And they shall construct an ark of acacia wood, 2.5. You know what? I'm starting in Exodus 25:1. We got to get this in context. We're going to start in Exodus 25:1. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Tell the sons of Israel to raise a contribution for me. From every man whose heart moves him, you shall raise my contribution. And this is the contribution which you are to raise from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet material, fine linen, goat hair, ram skins dyed red, porpoise skins, acacia wood, oil for lighting, spices for the anointing oil and for the fragrant incense, onyx stones and setting stones for the ephod and for the breastpiece. And let them construct a sanctuary for me, that I may dwell among them, according to all that I'm going to show you, as the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all of its furniture, just so you shall construct it. And they shall construct an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long, and 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. And you shall overlay it with pure gold, inside and out you shall overlay it. And you shall make a gold molding around it, and you shall cast 4 gold rings for it, and fasten them on its 4 feet. And 2 rings shall be on one side of it, and 2 rings on the other side of it. And you shall make poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold. And you shall put the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to carry the ark with them. The poles shall remain in the rings of the ark, they shall not be removed from it. And you shall put into the ark the testimony which I shall give you. And you shall make a mercy seat of pure gold, 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide. And you shall make 2 cherubim of gold. Make them of hammered work at the 2 ends of the mercy seat. And make 1 cherub at one end, and 1 cherub at the other end. And you shall make the cherubim of one piece with the mercy seat at its 2 ends. And the cherubim shall have their wings spread upward, covering the mercy seat, and their wings, the mercy seat with their wings, and facing one another. The faces of the cherubim are to be turned toward the mercy seat, and you shall put the mercy seat on top of the ark, and in the ark you shall put the testimony which I shall give you. And I will meet with you. And there I will meet with you, and from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim, which are upon the ark of the testimony, I will speak to you about all that I will give you in the commandment for the sons of Israel. So what we have here is Moses is up on Mount Sinai. He's there alone, and we're going to see he's going to be there for 40 days and 40 nights. And God is personally giving him instructions for this tabernacle. And the point of the tabernacle is that that's where God's going to dwell among his people. And then picking up on the actual Ark of the Covenant, we'll start in verse 10. You shall construct an ark of acacia wood. And this acacia wood, I understand it's a very... Well, the acacia tree is kind of gnarly and thorny. It has a very fragrant smell. And it's really dense, which this was just so interesting to me. It's very common in the desert. The wood is very, very dense, so it kind of protects from moisture. It's a very good... And the other interesting thing is insects don't like it. I don't know if it's a smell or a taste, but the insects do not like it. It's a hardwood, and it gets darker with age, and it's just a very dense, like I said, to keep the moisture out. Very dense.
Is it only grown in this part of the world?
I don't know if that's the only place. I just know it's very common there. From what I understood, it was very common. So we have it made of this acacia wood, and then it gives us the dimensions. I want to point out 2 things. One is we're building this ark, this tabernacle, which is where God's going to dwell. And we looked last week, it's an exact replica of what's in heaven. Heaven is the true tabernacle. This is a copy, is how Hebrews puts it, a copy of what's in heaven. And what I found interesting is as we're constructing this, notice where we're starting. We're starting with the innermost, inner holiest of holy place, which I find that very interesting. That's where we're starting, and then we'll work our way out. But we're starting with the most holy piece first. And then you have a picture of the ark. I found a better one after I printed these, but so I'll hope to have a better picture of all the pieces of furniture next week. But anyway, this was good. So this is the ark and the mercy seat, and so that kind of gives you a visual. The side of it is a perfect square, but then it's a rectangular shape. Okay, let's see. So yeah, okay, so in verse 10, so Exodus 25:10, it talks about being 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. That's 2.25. See, so it's 4.5 feet by.
Long.
Yes, that's the long part, and then the other end it's 2.25 feet, so 2.25 feet. And so that's the depth and the height.
Oh, the height.
Both.
Okay. Say that again.
Okay, where it says, let's see, mine says 2.5 cubits long.
I know, but say
That translates 4.5 feet. And then 1.5 cubits wide and 1.5 cubits high. That translates 2.25 feet. And it's made of this acacia wood. And then in verse 11, you shall overlay it with pure gold, inside and out. You shall overlay it, and you shall make a gold molding around it. So we talked last week, I think there were 2 tons of gold? 1 ton of gold. I can't remember my numbers. I think there was 1 ton of gold, 4 tons of silver, and 2.5 tons of bronze. So 1 ton of gold is for the whole tabernacle. So when we're finished, that's how much gold. They carried that out of Egypt into the wilderness. And just another FYI, from the day they were set free until this point, it's been about 2 months. So very new. Very new. Okay.
So it was the acacia wood covered in gold.
Pure gold, inside and out. So when you see it, it's gold, but it's overlaid. And then this gold molding around it. Okay, this part is so interesting. And you shall cast 4 gold rings for it and fasten them to its 4 feet. 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other. So you can see where in this picture where they showed it, they're at the bottom. It was so funny when I was trying to find a picture. You'll find cherubim that aren't what they're described. You'll find the ring. Some had the rings at the top. Very clearly, the rings are at the bottom, and we're going to see why in a minute. So the rings were at the bottom, and these were gold. These were pure gold rings at the bottom. Fasten them to the 4 feet, or at the bottom. 2 rings on one side, 2 rings on the other, and then they were to make a pole of acacia wood. So we have this pole, and then you overlay it with gold. Okay. And then you put the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to carry the ark with them. Very important, and we're getting ready to look at that. Very important. This is how they were to carry the ark, the poles. They were not to touch the ark. And then the poles shall remain in the rings of the ark. They shall not be removed from it. Okay, we're going to stop there and we're going to look at these instructions on. And remember, they're in the desert and they're going to be wandering around. And so when the cloud's over the tabernacle, they stay. But when the cloud lifts, they move. And so this has to be transportable. So they've got to be able to move it. And so we're going to look at some of the instructions on that.
We don't know how much it weighed, do we?
We do not know how much it weighed. I know, yes. Yes, and the dense wood and.
I think they were really thankful God didn't make it all cast
Yes. Yes.
Is that why? Because of the weight?
I don't know.
So I was wondering that.
Yeah.
Why they had to overlay it over the wood. And
Right.
not just make it solid, but maybe the weight.
I don't know. And isn't gold soft? though?
I think it's
I think it's
strong
gold.
enough.
Yeah.
That
Gold
green
soft. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was thinking about the rings. I'm like, they might wear out. Like, how do you-
So we're going to read some instruction and numbers on how this was to be transported. I've got to take my notes. Just kept growing the more I read. I know. I wish we could just read numbers today, but we probably don't have time for that. But like you were talking about, like having a deeper understanding and appreciation for the blood. I got that same thing this week with the holiness of God and the holy things of God. I mean, that fear of the Lord and just a reverence towards His holiness, that's what I really walked away with this week. And so we're going to start here. Okay, 151, we have one verse here. So when the tabernacle is to set out, the Levites shall take it down, and when the tabernacle encamps, the Levites shall set it up. But the layman who comes near shall be put to death. And, I mean, when you read Numbers, it's just amazing how they traveled through the desert. I mean, I talk about organized. God was amazing in administrating this. It was a perfect order, which tribe went where, and the breakdown and the setup of the tabernacle is going to be so clearly laid out. The instructions are clear, and it's very specific. And so that's what we're getting ready to see. Now, I want you to notice it's the Levites who are responsible for the setting up and the taking down of the tabernacle. And make note, the layman who comes near shall be put to death. So not following these instructions is going to end in death. Very serious. We're going to read a lot in Numbers chapter 4. Okay, so Numbers chapter 4, starting in verse 4.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, the layman, he won't drop dead. They'll put him to death. He comes here, correct? Is that correct?
We're going to say they drop dead.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
That's-
they drop dead. Yes, not good, not good at all. Very serious. Okay, so Numbers chapter 4, verse 4. Well, I've already got our family tree laid out for Levi, but we're going to wait till we really get to the priesthood to look at this. But just briefly, he's going to talk here about the descendants of Kohath. So there's Levi, and Levi had 3 sons. You can picture the family tree. Levi, and then he had 3 sons. And so it's kind of divided. One translation calls them clans. You have 3 different clans, but they're all under the Levite umbrella. They're just 3 different clans from his 3 sons. And this is one of the 3, Kohath. So the descendants of Kohath in the tent of meeting concerning the most holy things. When the camp sets out, Aaron and his sons shall go in. They shall take down the veil of the screen and cover the ark of the testimony with it. Now, this, when he talks about Aaron, we're getting even more specific. So you've got the Levites, and then within the Levites, you have the high priest, and they're the descendants of Aaron. So it's just going to get more and more narrow. And so it had to be a high priest. It had to be a descendant of Aaron, a high priest, who would go in. And they, there's a veil that was split when Jesus died. But the veil that separates the holy place from the Holy of Holies, they were to take that down and cover the ark with it.
Should we assume that was something like the curtain?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
like
exactly
a heavy
what that
curtain.
is. Yes, and we're gonna build that eventually. But yes, it's that veil. the veil of the screen, and cover the ark of the testimony with it. And thou shalt lay a covering of porpoise skin on that, and shall spread over it a cloth of pure blue, and shall insert the poles. And then it goes on to tell how to do the table of showbread and the other piece of furniture. But I want you to see how specific this is. There was very clear instructions. Only the high priest. You cover it. It's got 3 coverings. So just keeping that in mind.
This is when they traveled.
This is when they traveled. Every time they traveled and moved, this is what they would do. And I mean, it just lays out such clear instruction how to do this.
Was there significance about the blue?
I'm sure. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure it was significant because he says it so specifically and more than once. Okay, and then we'll.
So I know your sea cow hides are very thick and very durable.
Yes.
So they would be very protective over whatever they're covering.
Yes. In fact, they describe. I guess they still use it to this day to make sandals. Whatever it's a.
Oh,
yeah, to make sandals. It's the leathery type. Yeah, very, very, very durable. Very thick, very durable. Okay, and then skipping down to verse 15. I mean, he just goes through all the pieces of. We're going to build it. We'll probably look at it as we go. And then verse 15. So Numbers chapter 4, verse 15. And when Aaron and his sons have finished covering the holy objects and all the furnishings of the sanctuary. And remember last week we talked about all the different names for this. Here it's referred to as the sanctuary. It's talking about this tabernacle. Okay, when the camp is to set out, after that the sons of Kohath shall come to carry them, so that they may not touch the holy objects and die. These are the things in the tent of meeting with which the sons of Kohath are to carry. Very specific again, don't touch it, carry it by the poles. And then skipping down to 17. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, Do not let the tribe of the families of the Kohathites be cut off from among the Levites, but do this to them that they may live and not die when they approach the most holy objects. Aaron and his sons shall go in and assign each of them to his work and to his load. But they shall not go in to see the holy objects even for a moment, lest they die. They weren't even to look on it. They weren't even to. Now, is that clear? And the consequence, it's so clear. If you look on it, you'll die. If you touch it, you die. This is a very holy piece. It's God's dwelling, and it's holy, and they were to revere it as holy. And then Numbers 7:9. I mean, I feel like we're just like skimming over, looking at a couple of verses, and yet it feels very clear. When you read the whole thing, it's very, very clear. He doesn't stutter. It's very clear. And so here we have Numbers 7:9. Oh, did I have? I think
17 and 20.
Yeah, I think we're going to start. So Numbers chapter 7, we're going to start earlier. Oh, yeah, we have to read this part. So we'll pick up in verse 4. So Numbers chapter 7, verse 4. So we're still in Numbers. I didn't put it on your notes, did I?
There's 2 pages right.
Oh, okay. Yes, right here.
Number.
Right here. This is where we are. Yes. Yes. And we're actually going to start in verse 4. Not 9.
Number 4.
Yes. Numbers chapter 7, verse 4. Yeah, number 7. Go to 7. And we'll start in verse 4. Right there. So Numbers 7:4. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Accept these things from them, that they may be used in the service of the tent of meeting, and you shall give them to the Levites, to each man according to his service. So Moses took the carts and the oxen and gave them to the... I'm going to start in 7:1. Yeah, we got to start in 7:1. Even though it'll become clear, we'll still start in 7:1. Now it came about on the day that Moses had finished setting up the tabernacle, he anointed it and consecrated it with all of its furnishings, and the altar and all its utensils. He anointed them and consecrated them also. Then the leaders of Israel, the heads of the father's household, made an offering. They were the leaders of the tribes. They were the ones who were over the numbered men. When they brought their offering before the Lord, 6 covered carts and 12 oxen, a cart for every 2 of the leaders, and an ox for each one, then they presented them before the tabernacle. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Accept these things from them, that they may be used in the service of the tent of meeting, and you shall give them to the Levites, to each man according to his service. So Moses took the carts and the oxen and gave them to the Levites. 2 carts and 4 oxen he gave to the sons of Gershon, according to their service, and 4 carts and 8 oxen he gave to the sons of Merari, according to their service, under the direction of Ithamar, the son of Aaron, the priest. But he did not give any to the sons of Kohath, because theirs was the service of the holy objects, which they carried on the shoulder. So all of this... So you just saw the other 2 sons of Levi. So you have Levi, and he had 3 sons, Gershon, Merari, and Kohath. They each had responsibilities in transporting this tabernacle. So Kohath does the holy, holy things, and they were not to put him on a cart. They were to carry him on their shoulder, hence the poles. The other 2 groups, they had like the poles and all the other things that went along with the temple or the tabernacle worship. They were allowed to put those on carts, covered carts, and transport them like that. So 1 cart and 2 oxen, and they were allowed to use that to transport the other items. Kohath is responsible for the holy objects. They were not to touch them, and they were not to go in carts. They were to be carried on the shoulder, which is why they weren't to carry down here. And that's why the poles are at the bottom. So you set it on, and you just get this picture. Man is lower than God. This is where God dwells. This is where he was. And they elevated above themselves. They made themselves lower. I was thinking about your testimony. Deanna talked about when God's word just pierced her heart. She couldn't get low enough, like just wanting to sink into the floor, couldn't get low enough. And I was thinking about that. Wouldn't be very efficient carrying it through the desert on your belly. so the poles, and then it elevates it, and then it elevates it. So very high as they travel through. And that's how they would carry all the holy objects on their shoulders.
Was there 4 of them? Was there more of them?
I think there's just 4. I think there would have been 4 on the corners. And they would have traveled that way. So 4 men, I'm sure it was very heavy, and you have 4 men carrying it on their shoulders. And I think we're going to see this theme continue as we look at the priesthood and the tabernacle. But part of the role of the priest are to keep the holy things of God holy, and to make a huge separation and distinction between common and holy. And you begin to see this here. The more we study the priesthood, the more you're going to see the seriousness of keeping the holy things of God holy, and not making the holy things of God common. Very serious. So
I could be wrong, and I really admit that. Because I'm sitting here thinking, these guys that are having to carry these poles, this cost them something. This wasn't a light thing to carry. And they probably got their strongest guys there, and it probably was still a burden.
that's kind of the picture. You shoulder the burden of carrying the holy. Yes, you do. You get that picture.
But it was like a gift. You've been given
a gift. Right.
That burden is a gift to you.
And I think, if I remember correctly, it was age 30 to 50
That makes sense.
that would be responsible for 20 years of service.
So they did it every day, or they rotated?
No, only when they traveled.
Well, I mean, when they traveled, okay, if we're
Yes.
going how many miles? We go
Right.
3 days. Did the same guys?
I
All
don't
the time?
know. I don't know. I'm sure if we read this, it would probably become clear. I don't know. I just know it was assigned to that particular tribe. They may have been able to rotate it, but they alone could carry the holy
Right.
things. They had to be from that family, but I don't know about the specific men.
I don't know why
I don't know.
care, I just would like.
I know, it's interesting. It's very
What tribe
interesting.
was Moses from?
Moses and Aaron are from the tribe of Kohath.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So Gershon is Moses' son.
No, not this one. I know. Yeah.
But it said Gershonite clan, so this could be,
This goes all the way back to, think of Genesis. And Jacob had 12 sons. So all the way back in Genesis, there was Levi, and he had 3 sons. So this goes all the way, way, way back, long before Moses was born. So Moses named his son. I think his son ended with an M, not an N, though. I'm not sure. I think it's a little different, but I don't know. But this is Levi's son, and he's a clan within the tribe of Levi. That makes sense.
Back in chapter 4, when it talked about keeping the clan not cut off from the Levites, so
Yes.
that they may live and not die when they come near. What does that mean?
That's our question. I understand this to mean if they disobeyed or didn't do it correctly or didn't do it in reverence, that they would be cut off. You know, when you read the whole thing, it says, "Do not let the tribe of the families of Kohath be cut off from among the Levites, but do this to them that they may live and not die." So I think it's making them holy. He goes, I don't know if it's here, where they go through all the consecration.
He had just told the sons of Aaron that they need to cover up the holy objects.
Yes.
He's saying, do this for them so that they can live. Because
Yes.
if they see them, they're going to die.
Yes, yes,
That's how I
good,
read it.
good words. Yes, perfect. That's exactly how I understood it too. That all these things are put in place to protect them. The poles, the coverings, the. Okay, and
So
okay,
it's something
let's.
they're doing for them. It's not something that the men, like the Kalite tribe.
Okay, I
are
think
doing.
I understand
Does
your
that make
question.
sense?
Okay, let me explain this. Because I promise we're going to cover this thoroughly. I should have just
Okay.
done it today. So within the 3, so Levi, picture our family tree. Levi has 3 sons, so there's Kohath. So there's all these descendants of Kohath. But to be a high priest, you had to come from Aaron. So even Moses' children, everyone before that. So it was the high priest who covered it. So only Aaron's descendants covered it. But it looks like just the priest, not the high priest, would be responsible for the transporting. So the high priests were to do this in order that they didn't look on it or.
Yeah, I just misunderstood. Like, I felt like they were supposed to do something so that they weren't cut off from the Levites. But it means just the high priests are doing something for them so that they don't die.
Yes,
basically.
exactly. So the high
and be
priest.
cut off from the Levites.
Yes, that would be yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
that makes more sense.
Okay, okay.
Okay, from my
Yeah.
worldly perspective, I get that part. But I also see the high priest is getting a little above everybody else and thinking, we're the chosen, we're the good. God doesn't really need you. He just needs us. And so part of me when we read that was like, okay, don't let the Cohenites or Kohanim, get cut off from the Levites because that's family. Who's going to take care of them if they decide, we don't really need anybody else?
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
So that's my worldly perspective on that. Was that if you get too uppity and you get zapped, who's going to take care of you and your family?
Okay. I think we're going to look at an aspect of that in this next part when we look at King David transporting it. So, keep that in mind. Because I think we're going to look at an aspect of that.
You know, it's amazing to me how everything is so particular.
I
You know, and how free that we are, but yet there are still things that we should and should not
Yes.
do, and ways we should and should not do the things we do. yes, we live under grace.
Yes.
But all of the laws and regulations and things that God, now these obviously, but God told us some things, and we shouldn't just blow those things off.
Now,
They're
as-
important.
As you're saying that, like what's in the back of my head is we're studying the priesthood, and why we want to look at it so carefully is because the New Testament, we're being made into a holy priesthood. Yes. And so while, no, we don't transport the ark through the wilderness, absolutely we're responsible for keeping the holy things holy and separate from the common. Very much so. Yes. So, yeah. And, yeah.
And our society has a, this is off, we won't stay here very long, but, we have a tendency to kind of think that nothing is truly set apart and held holy. We commonize, that's not a word I would have, but anyway, just these things that are holy.
Yes, and like, I mean, we see it all the time, making God, rather than just bringing God down and making him more man, I don't know, yes, yeah, just, right, the common versus the holy, making him more, just bringing him down, I don't know, not revering his holiness. But this lesson today just made me think about that so much, and how as the priesthood we too are to keep the holy things of God holy, and if we don't,
I have a silly question.
yeah, no, that's the thing.
Like we were talking about, everything's so particular, like how to lay this on that.
Yes.
This needs to be this tall. Did God speak these things to me? I have to put pictures in my head of what things look like and how it
Yes.
happened, or did he give him a vision of this is what this is supposed to look like? Because it just seems so wordy.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that too, how did they
Did he
record
speak
this
to
so that
him,
they
or-
could all remember it?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Or did he just give him a vision? How did this happen?
Okay. It's not a silly question.
Okay.
First of all, I think there's no such thing as silly questions.
Okay.
But Exodus chapter 24, if you looked there, this was so fascinating. Let's just look at it together. Exodus 24. And this is when, so God, starting in 20, 21, 22, 23, he lays out the law. I mean, he lays it out. And then in chapter 24, so Exodus 24?
Exodus 24.
Yeah, Exodus 24.
Okay.
This is when they confirm the covenant with God. So let's just look at that together. I'm trying to see where to pick up. We'll pick up in verse 6. Oh, I'm 1. We're going to read starting in verse 1. It's too hard to just pick up. I can't summarize as well as he just says it. So 24:1. Then he said to Moses, "Come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and you shall worship at a distance. Moses alone, however, shall come near to the Lord, but they shall not come near, nor shall the people come up with him." Then Moses came and recounted to the people all the words of the Lord and all the ordinances, and all the people answered with one voice and said, "All the words which the Lord has spoken we will do." Moses wrote down all the words of the Lord. Then he arose early in the morning, built an altar at the foot of the mountain with 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. And he sent young men with the sons of Israel, and they offered burnt offerings and sacrificed young bulls as peace offerings to the Lord. And Moses took half the blood, put it in a basin, and the other half of the blood he sprinkled on the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant, read it in the hearing of the people, and they said, "All the Lord has spoken we will do, and we will be obedient." So Moses took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and said, "Behold, the blood of the covenant which the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words." So they just confirmed the covenant. When you read about the Old Covenant, the Old Testament covenant, this is it. And this is when they ratified the covenant with the blood, the sprinkling of the blood.
So
Then,
the blood was the sealing of the covenant?
Yes, yes. So then verse 9, then Moses went up with Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and they saw the God of Israel. And under his feet there appeared to be a pavement of sapphire, as clear as the sky itself. Yet he did not stretch out his hand against the nobles of the sons of Israel. And they beheld God, and they ate and drank. So this is what you would call a covenant meal. After you enter into a covenant with someone, you share a covenant meal. And so when it says they saw God, I'm picturing it like what John described in Revelation, the light and indescribable, but you know it's him, unmistakably him. So they see this. So to answer your question, he got a glimpse of it there, and then they all come down the mountain, and then Moses alone goes back up. So he's alone with God at the top of the mountain. I think he probably saw it, got a glimpse of it, plus he's getting the verbal instruction, plus God's going to write this. So it's heard, it's seen, it's written, read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He like ate and drank.
Yes, that was a covenant meal between two parties that just entered into a covenant together. It's amazing. I know. It's just like one verse. You're like, oh, it has to be a chapter.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes. So that's where that's.
Gives you chills.
I know. And then Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu. So Aaron is the high priest, and then Nadab and Abihu are also going to be high priests until they die. And then they're going to die.
Are they at this point high priests? Yes.
Well, he hasn't said, he has not established that. He will, as we're reading, and we'll come to that. But they're going to be, so they get a glimpse of the holiness of God. Okay, any other questions? Okay. And
Now what chapter?
okay, let's see where I gotta look. We're going to go to 2 Samuel.
2 Samuel.
And I already see an error on your pages. It's going to be 1 Chronicles.
This one.
Yeah. 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel chapter 6. Again, I just want us to see the holiness of God. No, the holiness. So 2 Samuel chapter 6.
1 through 9.
Yes, 1 through 9. 2 Samuel chapter 6, verses 1 through 9. Now David again gathered all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. I'll wait till and so 2 Samuel chapter 6, starting in verse 2. And David arose and went with all the people who were with him to Baal, Judah, to bring up from there the ark of God, which is called by the name, the very name of the Lord of hosts, who is enthroned above the cherubim. And they placed the ark of God on a new cart, that they might bring it from the house of Abinadab, which is on the hill, and Uzzah and Ahio, and the sons of Abinadab, were leading the new cart. So they brought it with the ark of God from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill, and Ahio was walking ahead of the ark. Meanwhile, David and all the house of Israel were celebrating before the Lord with all kinds of instruments made of fir wood, and with lyres, harps, tambourines, castanets, and cymbals. But when they came to the threshing floor of Nakon, Uzzah reached out toward the ark of God, took hold of it, for the oxen nearly upset it. And the anger of the Lord burned against Uzzah, and God struck him down there for his irreverence. And he died there by the ark of God. So David has just conquered Jerusalem. He's going to build his palace there. That's going to be the new capital. This is a great day in the life of Israel. This was a huge day. and they're going to have this big celebration, and they want to bring the Ark of God to Jerusalem. Their king and their God are going to dwell in Jerusalem. That's going to be their capital. Notice in verse 6, David gathered all the chosen men of Israel. There were 30,000 of them. They gathered together, and they decide to bring up the Ark of God there. Like I said, it's just this huge, huge celebration.
They're no longer carrying it now. They're putting it on the cart, correct?
Yes. But not because they were supposed to. In fact, if you read back earlier in 1 Samuel, the Philistines captured it. That's how they transported it.
On a what?
On a cart. So they're doing it the way the Philistines did it. Can I just say, not a good idea?
But they all didn't drop dead at that point.
No.
No, but don't you kind of feel sorry for him? And just try to keep it from falling. That kind of tells us that when God tells us no, we don't need to go around and try to fix the problem.
I was just reading this and going, I know, okay, but let's talk about this. Could God have been any more clear on how to transport His ark?
But don't you see that in your own? I see it in my own life. I'm like, okay, God, I'm going to help.
Sally, when I read this,
I know you know best, but I'm going to help you. I've done that many times.
Sally, when I read this, I was just like, what is wrong with
Thank
us?
God you don't strike me dead.
I was thinking about our Awana verse. Our heart is so deceitful and desperately sick. This is a spotlight on how sick our heart is. It's so desperately sick. Because that's exactly what our human nature does. Exactly. And in fact, I was going through this last night, and I was just thinking, this is like Mythbusters. We're going to bust some myths here. I mean, one, God's mercy. We want to change God's mercy into, well, then He's so merciful, He wouldn't punish sin. And look, they're all celebrating, and it's such a good thing. And, He's going to be so merciful and not punish sin. Wrong. His mercy is in the warning. I mean, He spent chapters explaining, put in the poles, carry it with the poles, don't let anyone touch it, don't let anyone see. That was the other thing. Don't let anyone they weren't even supposed to look on the ark. Do you see any coverings here?
But the people right before him that put it on the cart did not die.
No.
But when he reached out, he died.
I know.
But they may have carried it by the poles and not touched the ark.
Right, to put it on there. Yeah, they could have.
that may be.
Yeah.
Well, and the irreverence, I think, comes when he figured that he could save God from falling out. It's
Yes.
Like, you're not going to protect the holy God. He's not going to let himself fall out of the cart.
That is
like
so-
he's the one who's in charge of that anyway. And that's where our irreverence is. Like, when we figure that we are bigger and we're going to prop up his throne so that he can still be exalted in our lives. Like we have no control over exalting his throne. He's on it himself.
Yes.
And that's irreverence.
Well, I just think it shows that we haven't got a clue of His holiness.
Yes.
How holy He
No.
is.
No reverence for the holiness of God is what I got out of that.
The greatness of God. Like, how did he forget that God was great enough to hold himself up?
And like,
But how do we forget every day that we try to
it's our
God?
desperately sick hearts. They are so desperately sick. I know, and we forget so easily.
And think about the actual high priest. I mean, his blood
I
was
know.
really on their hands. They're the ones
Yes.
who stepped forward and said, "Wait a minute, we need
Yes.
to read about this.
You just
Make
never.
sure we do it right."
I mean, everybody. And the other thing, I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, and also, however they got this thing on the cart, the ark, it doesn't, he still should have been obedient to what God had told him.
Yes.
No matter what anybody else is doing and how logical it seems, I am still required to be obedient to what God says, even though they don't.
And like, we're not free to invent or define holiness. Like a new cart. In their heads, a new cart. Well, that's reverent enough. We'll put them on a new. It's like man's idea of what's appropriate and holy. if I were God, that'd be fine with me. You know, it's just such a blatant, irreverent rebellion. It's so rebellious. It's
So
just
was that guy Abnabar, however you
Yeah,
say
I
it,
know.
was he even a Levite? Like, was it?
exactly. There's no mention of any Levi, and we'll look at Chronicles too, and it gives some genealogy, but you won't see Levi in it. It's just so.
I guess they wanted God to come and live amongst them, but they didn't want to have to clean up their life and, you know.
It was more like a good luck charm,
Yeah.
a symbolic. It wasn't a reverent fear of God. It was man's idea of holy, and all this celebration. It was just like bringing in a good luck charm.
But like God, I want you in my not in this area. You
Right.
can, but this area is okay.
Right.
So.
Yes.
Well, the card probably made it a lot easier, I assume.
Oh yeah.
So the
Yeah. A
burden's
lot
a lot
easier.
lighter.
Exactly.
to do it that
Yeah.
way.
No burden on man. Just get an oxen to. Yeah. No. It was. Yeah.
The reason it was out of the temple or the tabernacle to begin with is because they were bringing it with them into battle.
Yes.
When it's holy and bringing it into
Yes.
battle for their good luck charm.
That's what I. That's where I was.
crazy.
Yes, exactly.
That's what
It was just. Yeah. It's like I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to put it in words, but it's just really, really, really bad.
I think it does show the mercy of God because they all deserve to die.
Exactly.
And only one.
Yes. Yes, yes, that's a very good point. Very good point. And one old preacher is quoted as having said, uses greatest sin is thinking his hand was holier than the ground. And like, you know, sinful man, right, we're not holier than, dirt. We're not holier than dirt. So that, yes. And then the other thing, Mythbuster, is that just the idea that, oh, if my heart's right, it doesn't matter if I'm wrong. You know, as long as my heart's in the right place, my sick, desperately sick, deceitful heart. One, our hearts are not. I mean, this is this just busts that myth. And I mean, if you really have a good heart, which we don't, but just even going with that, I mean, to be obedient to the Lord, to seek out His way. How does He say to try? I mean, a good heart would desire to do it His way. So, I mean, it's not even a good heart that doesn't even want to do it God's way, doesn't even seek His word on that.
So our excuse, my heart's in the right place,
Yes.
really doesn't hold any.
No.
Because if it's really in the right place, then
you would have
we wouldn't
sought
done that in
the
first
Lord
place.
to begin with. Yes. How do we, just pulled out the scriptures. You know, I mean, there's chapter after chapter after chapter on how to transport this. Let's get out the Word of God and let's see how, let's refresh our memories. It's been a while. No, none of that. Just, I have a good idea. I want the ark here. Let's go get the ark. Woo, we're going to be so victorious. Woo, victory. You know, it's,
The priests weren't taking their job seriously, though, either, and
None
leading
of them.
the people to do the right thing.
None of
They
them.
weren't speaking against anything, so they were just letting them just do what they wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like to Nelisa's point, I heard a sermon on this, and one of the things that just kept coming to my mind from that sermon as I was looking at this is he talked, of course, David just had this great victory over the Jebusites. They just conquered, they're moving into Jerusalem, great victory. And just the notion that God is not on David's side. God's not going to protect David no matter what. I'm not going to be able to say it in good words, but David was victorious because he was on God's side. He was doing it God's way. And that willingly free, God is for me, who can make it? Well, only if you're, we choose which side. He doesn't pick sides. He is. We choose His way or reject His way. And I just kept thinking about that point as I was reading that. Just a great reminder. Yeah, you just get so, we get so comfortable, and I don't know. Let's look at it. There were a couple of parts, and it's in First Chronicles, even though I put the wrong word. I put second in your notes. It's First Chronicles. And it's the same account, it just gives a little different detail. First Chronicles 13.
Second Chronicles.
No, first. First
Okay.
Chronicles. Yeah, it said it's first. I put you wrong. First Chronicles.
Yeah.
It should be one. And then verse 13. Chapter 13. Yeah, it's first.
First Corinthians
Yes. And then verse 13.
7,
13.
13.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right here. Perfect. I'm just going to read it. We're going to get a little different detail. Then David consulted with the captains of the thousands and the hundreds, even with every leader. And David said to all the assembly of Israel, "If it seems good to you, and if it's from the Lord our God, let us send everywhere to our kinsmen who remain in all the land of Israel, also to the priests and the Levites who are with them in their cities and pasture lands, that they may meet with us. And let us bring back the ark of God to us, for we did not seek it in the days of Saul." Then all the assembly said that they would do so, for the thing was right in the eyes of all the people. I know. Problem number one. And then notice who they consulted. I mean, it never said, go get the scrolls. Go see what, Remember when we had all those, let's go get the scrolls. I mean, they just gathered. They had a planning meeting. They got together. This seemed right in their own eyes. And so they're just going to go with it. So David assembled all of Israel together from the Sihor of Egypt, even to the entrance of Hamath, to bring the ark of God from Kiriath Jearim. And David and all of Israel went up to Baalah, that is, I can't say these words, which belongs to Judah, to bring up from there the ark of God, the Lord who is enthroned above the cherubim, where his name is called. And they carried the ark of God on a new cart from the house of Abinadab, and Uzzah and Ahio drove the cart. And David and all of Israel were celebrating before God with all their might, even with songs and with lyres, harps, tambourines, cymbals, and trumpets. When they came to the threshing floor of, Uzzah put his hand out to hold the ark, because the oxen nearly upset it, and the anger of the Lord burned against Uzzah. So he struck him down because he put his hand to the ark, and he died there before God. Then David became angry because the Lord's outburst against Uzzah, and he called the place Perez Uzzah to this day. And David was afraid of God that day, saying, "How can I bring the ark of God home to me?" I mean, do you see the self-centeredness there? Can I bring the ark home to me? I mean, it was just, yeah.
Who's on a threshing floor?
I know, isn't that interesting? A threshing floor, yes. Yes, where judgment takes place. Yeah. And I think, it's interesting that the Lord's anger burned against Uzzah. We've covered all of that, but the Lord's anger burned against him. He struck him down because he put out his hand to the ark, and he died there. But then David became angry because of the Lord's outburst. And this outburst, the implication of the word is that it was unfair. It was unfair. It was this just sudden outburst, and it wasn't I know. And the positive in this is that David did become angry, but then he sought the Lord, and we're going to see that in chapter 15. Then he, worked through his anger, but it drove him to the Lord to eventually find out, what went terribly wrong or why the outburst. And so in 2 Chronicles 15, I'm going to try to pick up in 12 because there are just a lot of names before this. So 1 Chronicles 15:12, and it's David talking. The David call, he tells, we do have to look at 11. Then David called for, I can't say these names, the priests, and for the Levites. Okay, yay, finally, yes, he calls for the priests and Levites, and said to them, you are the heads of your father's households, of the Levites. Consecrate yourselves, both you and your relatives, that you may bring up the ark of the Lord God of Israel to the place that I have prepared for it. Because you did not carry it at the first, the Lord our God made an outburst on us, for we did not seek him according to the ordinance. So the priests and the Levites consecrated themselves to bring up the ark of the Lord God of Israel. And the sons of the Levites carried the ark of God on their shoulders with the poles thereon, as Moses had commanded, according to the word of the Lord. So, a lesson, do not take God's word lightly. He's so merciful that he's made it clear. He's given us clear instructions. Don't take it lightly. It's to be taken seriously. It's to be taken to heart.
So it was David's job to call the Levites, not the Levites to come.
Well, they should have known.
Why
The
did they?
Levites should have known in the first place.
Well, who told
Well, I
them
know,
that they
but,
couldn't do it?
you know.
Who
Yeah.
took their job away? Why was
Yeah.
that? Why did that
I just-
happen?
They were
Fill out the
delinquent and
hierarchy.
not doing.
Yeah,
they were
well,
not doing
I mean,
what
David's
Did
king.
David move himself above them then?
Well, David's king.
Right.
And he, of course, this group gets together, and I mean, it was just wrong from A to Z. They assembled with the people. They had a planning. I was like, we're Baptist, a planning committee, and I mean, they did what seemed right. Like, I just never consulted the Lord, never consulted His word. I don't
And the
know why.
Levites maybe were more afraid of David than they were.
I just don't know. I just know it was done very wrong. And there are so many lessons to be gleaned from this incident. I know. That's what's so scary.
We're all attending a Bible study, and what are the odds that we finish this day?
I know. Right.
You know,
Before we get home. Yes. Yes, road rage. I know, exactly. So I think with that in mind, and we're going to see this played out even more.
But when we see this, it's pretty plain here to see what's going on. But it's much in our own lives, we've got kind of like blinded sometimes.
Yes. And I think that's the point of these, when we study this, it's not, we want to recognize sin as sin.
Right.
Our flesh, natural tendency is to justify ourselves, to see this in us and say, oh, but my heart was right. So we're not going to get rid of the sin, but at least have a right view of our sin. So instead of saying, well, my heart was right, even though I did the wrong thing, we need to say that and say, oh my goodness, I have sinned. We want to confess. We want to see sin as sin and confess it. We will never be flawless. We are not going to make it home without sinning. But I think the idea is just to see our sin the way God sees it. Yes.
I think another point to make is, maybe some of them didn't know, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But the priest should have known, David should have known, but, maybe some of them didn't know, but it wasn't, maybe it was a partial excuse why he didn't just wipe all of them out, but it was no excuse for touching the ark. And every single one of us are sitting here with this book in front of us, and we carry it around, and it sits at our house, and there's no excuse for us not to know what God asks of us, and the consequences,
Yes.
we should be held accountable.
Yes.
We don't
We
do
are.
God's fault
That's
either.
the thing.
That's right.
We are accountable. That's the thing. And we're looking at incidents where the punishment was immediate. What we want to know that just because there's delayed consequence, it doesn't mean he still feels the same. He has not changed. And he still feels the same way about the way we treat the holy things of the Lord. Just because the death part or the consequences are delayed, it doesn't mean they're not coming. It's just in His amazing mercy, He's giving ample time for repentance. And that's the other thing I was saying about. You were talking about last week about seeking the Lord with all your heart. That's what it means. And like making disciples, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded. I mean, first is you've got to know what he's commanding. And we are responsible. We absolutely are. There are no excuses. There are
Well,
no.
I can see too, like, he touched the ark, and that was immediate.
Yes.
But this started going on
Right.
this during Saul's reign
Yes.
of the ark being used incorrectly. So
Yes.
there was a lot of consequences not given.
Yes.
I mean, the Philistines returned it on the ox basically by like going, there you go. Take
Yes,
it down to those
please.
people. Those are Jews right down there. You don't
yes.
know who they are, and they just sent them down. You know,
Yes.
like so a generation of wrongdoing, and then we just get in the habit of
Yes.
doing it wrong because that's what we always did. And so that was immediate, but there was a lot of grace given
Yes.
to that point of a lot of wrongdoing with the ark.
Yes. Very good.
How long was this after the ark was built to this time, do we know?
Okay, I can't. I have my timeline, but David's reign was around 1000 BC ish. So, I think I can't remember where we are BC ish. I don't know. Okay, I can't remember.
That's okay, you can look some other time.
Okay, yeah, but it's. I mean, it's a long. I mean, you've gone through all the you've gone through Joshua, conquering the land,
years.
all the judges, King Saul. Yeah, it's a long time removed.
Well, and Uzzah could have put blame on anybody. You know, some say the Levites
Yes.
were to blame or whoever. But when it comes to us too, I mean, it's the same thing. We could blame our preacher for telling us something right or wrong, but it's our job still to follow.
To know
There's
it.
no
Yes.
excuse.
No excuse.
And I just think we're so dependent on what our parents taught us, and what their parents taught them, what our great-grandparents taught, and even our kids. I mean, are my kids Christians because I tell them they need to be? I mean, the less it's about our heart, I mean, like Dion said, that if we're not in here and doing it because God asked me to, then it's not really real. I mean, it's not going to last. I mean, I can't depend on my parents' faith for my faith, and my kids can't depend on mine. I mean, it has to be personal. It has to be a personal thing. I mean, they needed to do that because God told them not to, not because it's David or whoever.
Right. That's a
said
good
not to.
point. Yeah, that's a very good point.
And then also, too, he's telling us, be prepared, be aware, because you need to know this, because eventually in the end days there's going to be the false prophets.
Yes, exactly. And it's the only protection we have against false is truth. You know, that's the only thing that's going to protect us is to know the truth. And then anything that doesn't match, right. And just like in this instance, why did I remember reading that? Or, you know, but no one, I don't know. Yeah, you're right.
I'm thinking about David and how he would read to Saul. Like, he had probably read these things, you know, because Saul would call him to read to him and sing to him, and so he knew Scripture. He was reading it, he knew it, but he just didn't follow it. And we're like that too. Like, we know it, we've heard it, we've read it our whole lives, and like you were saying about your parent, you know, our parents' faith, and how far do we let ourselves slip before we get rocked back into reality and go, oh, that's the thing that could kill us, you know?
Yes.
Ugh, man, it's staring us right in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the Lord still loved him and still loves us.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking. I mean, when we go to but my heart was right. We want to excuse our sin. We just want to excuse our sin. And I thought if David, a man after God's own heart, was not excused because of his good heart, but then, like you're saying, the forgiveness is just so amazing. So, yeah, we're back to not why aren't some people saved? The question is, why would he extend salvation and forgiveness to anyone?
I laugh that we always say that my heart's in the right spot. But in Scripture, it tells us, like in Jeremiah, the heart is deceitful above all things.
Desperately.
Beyond cure. Like,
I know.
Why do we keep saying that when it's not? You know,
Yes.
like, what an excuse that we make up, a worldly excuse.
Yes, yeah, and it just, I know, but that's our natural tendency is to excuse our sin, and I cannot believe it is so late.
Traditionally, peace offering.
Yes.
The meaning the Ark of God is also called the Ark of the Covenant.
Yes, it is. It's the Ark of the Covenant. And we were supposed to talk on that next, but we're out of time. It just flies when you're having fun.